Buddhist morality and practice. Buddhist ethics. Moral laws, customs, and manners are made by human beings, but Buddhist ethics are based on universal values. The world today is in a state of turmoil. Valuable ethics are being upturned. The forces of materialistic skepticism have turned their dissecting blades on the traditional concepts of what are considered humane qualities. Yet, any person who cares about culture and civilization should be concerned with practical, ethical issues. For ethics has to do with human conduct. It is concerned about our relationship with ourselves and with our fellow human beings. The need for ethics arises from the fact that human beings are not perfect by nature, they have to train themselves to be good. Thus morality becomes the most important aspect of living. Buddhist ethics are not arbitrary standards invented by people for their own utilitarian purpose. Nor are they arbitrarily imposed from without. Laws and social customs do not form the basis of Buddhist ethics. For example, the styles of dress that are suitable for one climate, period, or civilization may be considered indecent in another. But this is entirely a matter of social custom and does not in any way involve ethical considerations. Yet the artificialities of social conventions are continually confused with ethical principles that are valid and unchanging. Buddhist ethics finds its foundation not on changing social customs but rather on the unchanging laws of nature. Buddhist ethical values are intrinsically a part of nature, and the unchanging law of cause and effect, karma. The simple fact that Buddhist ethics are rooted in natural law makes its principles both useful and acceptable to the modern world. The fact that the Buddhist ethical code was formulated over 2,500 years ago does not detract from its timeless character. Morality in Buddhism serves the practical purpose of leading people to the final goal of ultimate happiness. On the Buddhist path to emancipation, each individual is considered responsible for his or her own fortunes and misfortunes. Each individual is expected to work out deliverance through understanding and effort. Buddhist salvation is the result of one's own moral development and can neither be imposed nor granted to one by some external agent. The Buddha's mission was to enlighten beings on the nature of existence and to advise them how best to act for their own happiness and for the benefit of others. Consequently, Buddhist ethics are not commandments which people are compelled to follow. The Buddha had given advice on the conditions which were most wholesome and conducive to long-term benefit for self and others. Rather than addressing sinners with such words as shameful, wicked, wretched, unworthy, and blasphemous, he would merely say, "You are foolish in acting in such a way, since this will bring sorrow upon yourselves and others." The theory of Buddhist ethics finds its practical expression in the various precepts. These precepts or disciplines are nothing but general guides to show the direction which we should turn to on our way to final salvation. Although many of these precepts are expressed in a negative form, we must not think that Buddhist morality consists of abstaining from evil without the complement of doing good. The morality found in all the precepts can be summarized in three simple principles: to avoid evil, to do good, to purify the mind. This is the advice given by all the Buddhas. Dhammapada, 183. In Buddhism, the distinction between what is good and what is bad is very simple. All actions that have their roots in greed, hatred, and delusion that spring from selfishness foster the harmful delusion of selfhood. These actions are demeritorious or unskillful or bad. They are called akusala karma. All those actions which are rooted in the virtues of generosity, love, and wisdom, are meritorious kusala karma. The criteria of good and bad apply whether the actions are of thought, word, or deed. Buddhist morals are based on intention or volition. Karma is volition, says the Buddha. Actions themselves are considered as neither good nor bad, but only the intention and thought makes them so. Yet Buddhist ethics does not maintain that a person may commit actions that are conventionally regarded as sins, provided that he or she does so with the best of intentions. Had this been its position, Buddhism would have confined itself to questions of psychology and left the uninteresting task of drawing up lists of ethical rules and framing codes of conduct to less emancipated teachings. The connection between thoughts and deeds, between mental and material action, is an extension of thought. It is not possible to commit murder with a good heart, because taking of life is simply the outward expression of a state of mind dominated by aversion, anger, hate or greed. Deeds are condensations of thoughts, just as rain is a condensation of vapor. Deeds proclaim from the rooftops of action only what has already been committed in the silent and secret chambers of the heart. A person who commits an immoral act thereby declares that he or she is not free from unwholesome states of mind. Also, a person who has a purified and radiant mind, who has a mind empty of all defiled thoughts and feelings, is incapable of committing immoral actions. Buddhist ethics also recognizes the objectivity of moral values. In other words, the karmic consequences of actions occur in accordance with natural karmic law, regardless of the attitude of the individual or regardless of social attitudes toward the act. For example, drunkenness has karmic consequences. It is a negative action since it promotes one's own unhappiness as well as the unhappiness of others. The karmic effects of drunkenness exist despite what the drunkard or society may think about the habit of drinking. The prevailing opinions and attitudes do not in the least detract from the fact that drunkenness is objectively negative. The consequences, psychological, social, and karmic, make actions moral or immoral regardless of the mental attitudes of those judging the act. Thus, while ethical relativism is recognized, it is not considered as undermining the objectivity of values. What is Vinaya? Vinaya is the disciplinary code for self-training laid down by the Buddha for monks and nuns to observe. Vinaya plays a pivotal role to ensure their pure religious way of life. The Buddha did not formulate the code of discipline in a single exercise. However, he instituted certain rules as and when the need arose. Vinaya Pitaka and its commentary contain many significant stories about how and why certain rules were laid down by the Buddha. According to the Buddha, the best form of Vinaya was to discipline the mind, words, and action through insight and understanding. The early disciples of the Buddha were highly developed spiritually, and they had little need for a set of rules to be imposed upon them. However, as the monastic order, the Sangha, grew in numbers, it attracted many others, some of whom were not so developed spiritually. There arose some problems regarding their conduct and way of life, such as taking part in lay activities for their livelihood and yielding to temptations of sense pleasure. Owing to this situation, the Buddha had to lay down guidelines for the monks and nuns to follow so that they could distinguish the difference between the life of monks and laymen. The holy order of the monks and the nuns was comparably very highly organized in relation to other existing ascetic communities at that time. The Buddha prescribed all the necessary guidance to maintain the holy order in every aspect of living. When the Buddha passed away, these rules were collated so that the order could be organized around them. The code of conduct prescribed by the Buddha can be divided into two broad areas. These are universal moral codes, Lokavahya, most of which are applicable to all members of the order and lay people alike for leading a religious life. Certain other disciplinary codes or rules which can be instituted to meet the existing cultural and social constraints of the country at any one time are called Panativaja. In the first category are the universal laws which restricted all immoral and harmful evil deeds. The second category of rules applied almost directly to the monks and nuns in the observance of manners, traditions, duties, customs, and etiquette. Breaking of moral codes pertaining to the Lokavahya creates bad reputation. Whereas violation of disciplinary codes based on social conditions do not necessarily create bad karma. However, they are subject to criticism as violation in any form pollute the purity and dignity of the holy order. These rules were largely based on the socio-cultural situation or way of life prevailing in India 25 centuries ago. According to the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, the Buddha had proclaimed that some minor rules could be altered or amended to accommodate changes due to time and environment, provided they do not encourage immoral or harmful behavior. In fact, during the Buddha's time itself, certain minor rules were amended by the monks with his permission. The Buddha also advocated that Sikh monks and nuns be exempted from certain Vinaya rules. However, once the rules had been enumerated by the disciples in the first council, convened 3 months after the passing away of the Buddha, it was decided that all the rules should be maintained without any amendment because no one was certain as to which of the rules should be altered. Finally, the disciples decided to uphold all the precepts prescribed by the Buddha. Another reason why the early disciples did not agree to change any of the precepts was that there was no reason or occasion for them to do so within such a short period of time after the passing away of the Buddha. This was because, at that time, most of those who had renounced their worldly life had done so with sincerity and conviction. However, when the social conditions started to change and when Buddhism spread to many other parts of India and other countries, the decision made by the disciples not to change any precepts in the first council became a very big problem because some of the rules could not be adapted to meet the varying way of life and economic circumstances. As time went on, the rules became fossilized and some orthodox disciples insisted that the rules should be followed strictly to the letter rather than in the spirit. It was precisely to prevent rigid adherence to mere rules of this kind that the Buddha did not appoint a successor to take over after him. He had said that the understanding of the Dharma and upholding of the Dharma as the master should be enough to help one lead a holy life. Development of Sangha community. The Sangha community, in the course of time, evolved themselves into several sects, many of whom, while adhering to some major precepts as laid down by the Buddha, had, however, tended to ignore some of the minor rules. The Theravada sect appeared to be more orthodox, while the Mahayana and some other sects tended to be more liberal in their outlook and religious observances. The Theravada sect tried to observe the Vinaya to the very letter despite of changing circumstances and environment. Minor changes to the precepts had, however, taken place from time to time, but were not officially recognized even amongst the members of the Theravada sect. For instance, the Theravada sect observes strictly the rule of not taking food after the stipulated time of the day. The Theravada sect has not openly acknowledged the fact that certain variations could be allowed under special circumstances. Whilst members of other schools adapt themselves to the wearing of robes with appropriate color and pattern, the Theravada sect has continued to adhere to the use of the original robes that were traditionally prescribed despite the changed social and climatic conditions. As a result, many of the practices of the monkhood are clearly understood only by those who are born into traditional Buddhist cultures. This of course creates many problems when Buddhism is spread to other parts of the world, such as Western countries. Then, there are some monks who insist on observing the very letter of the Vinaya code rather than in its spirit, even though such action would embarrass the people around them. For example, more and more Buddhist monks are being invited to Western countries where the culture of the people and the climatic conditions are so vastly different from that in Asia. If monks insist on behaving exactly as they did in their homelands, their behavior would appear strange and ridiculous. Rather than earning respect, they would be subject to ridicule and suspicion. Here again the monk must apply his common sense and try not to make a mockery of himself in the eyes of people who belong to a culture different than his own. The important rule to be observed is that no immoral, cruel, harmful, and indecent acts are committed and that the sensitivities of others are respected. If the monks can lead their lives as honest, kind, harmless, and understanding human beings by maintaining their human dignity and discipline, then such qualities will be appreciated in any part of the world. Maintaining the so-called traditions and customs of their respective countries of origin have little to do with the essence of the Dharma as taught by the Buddha. Then, there is another problem. Many people, especially those in the West who have accepted the Buddhist way of life, having read the Vinaya rules in the texts, think that the monks must follow all the rules without amending them in any part of the world, in exactly the same manner as they were recorded in the texts. We must remember that some of these rules which were practiced in Indian society 25 centuries ago are irrelevant even in Asia today. It must be clearly borne in mind that the Buddha instituted the rules only for the members of the Sangha community who lived in India, the region where he lived. Those monks never had any experience of the way of life in another country. Their main concern was with their spiritual development with the minimum of disruption and annoyance to the society where they lived. Today, monks may experience many other new problems, if they strictly observe all the rules in a country where people cannot appreciate or understand them. The disciplinary code for lay devotees shows how a layman can lead a virtuous and noble life without renouncing the worldly life. The Buddha's advice to lay people is contained in such discourses as the Mangala, Parabhava, Sagala Veda, Vaisala, and Vajrapaja and many others. Many Vinaya rules apply only to those who have renounced the worldly life. Of course, a lay person may follow some of the rules if they help to develop greater spirituality. Changing society. When society changes, monks cannot remain as traditionalists without adapting to the changes, although they have renounced the worldly life. Sometimes conservative people who cannot understand this need for change criticize monks who adapt to the demands made by social reform. This does not mean, of course, that monks may change the rules to suit their own whims and fancies. When the monks want to amend even certain minor precepts, they would have to obtain the sanction of a recognized Sangha council. Individual monks are not at liberty to change any Vinaya rules. Such a council of Sangha members can also impose certain sanctions against monks who have committed serious violations of the disciplinary code and whose behavior discredits the Sangha. The Buddha instituted the council to help monks to prevent evil deeds and avoid temptation in a worldly life. The rules were guidelines rather than inviolable laws handed down by some divine authority. In Asian countries particularly, monks are accorded great respect and reverence. Lay people respect them as Dharma masters and as religious people who have sacrificed the worldly life in order to lead a holy life. Monks are expected to devote themselves to the study and practice of the Dharma and not earn a living. Lay people, therefore, see to their material well-being while they in turn look to the monks for their spiritual needs. As such, monks need to conduct themselves in such a way that will earn them the respect and reverence of the public. If, for example, a monk is seen in a disreputable place, he will be criticized even if he is not involved in any immoral action. Therefore, it is the duty of the monks to avoid certain uncongenial surroundings so as to maintain the dignity of the holy order. If the monks do not uphold their disciplinary code, lay people lose their confidence to attend to them. There are many instances recorded in the Buddhist texts when even during the Buddha's time, lay devotees had refused to look after arrogant, quarrelsome, or irresponsible monks. Monks can be criticized for carrying out certain worldly activities which only lay people are at liberty to do. Dharma and Vinaya. Many people have not yet realized that the Dharma, the truth expounded by the Buddha, is not changeable under any circumstances. Certain Vinaya rules are also included in this same category and they are not subject to change. But some other Vinaya rules are subject to change so as to avoid certain unnecessary inconveniences. Dharma and Vinaya are not the same. Certain monks try to observe certain traditions rigidly as if they are important religious principles, although others cannot find any religious significance or implication in their practices. At the same time, some selfish and cunning persons may even try to maintain certain outward manifestations of purity, in order to mislead innocent devotees to regard them as pious and sincere monks. Many so-called Buddhist practices in Asian countries that monks and others follow are not necessarily religious precepts but traditional customs upheld by the people at that time. On the other hand, certain manners introduced for monks to observe as disciplines truly help to maintain the dignity and serenity of the holy order. Although religious traditions and customs can create a congenial atmosphere for spiritual development, some Vinaya rules need to be amended according to changing social conditions. If this is not done, monks will have to face numerous problems in their association with the public in the modern society and their way of life because it is a mockery in the eyes of the public. Some lay people criticize monks for handling money. It is difficult to carry out their religious activities and to be active in modern society without dealing with money. What a monk must do is to be unattached to the money or property as personal belongings. That is what the Buddha meant. Of course, there may be some who deliberately misinterpret the rules to suit their material gain. They will have to bear the consequences of facing difficulties in gaining spiritual development. Of course, those who choose to confine themselves to an isolated area for meditation to gain peace of mind should be able to carry out their religious duties without hindrance from worldly concerns which can become burdensome. But they must first ensure that they have enough supporters to attend to their basic needs like food, shelter, and medicine. While there can be such monks who wish to retire completely from society, there must be enough monks in society to attend to the numerous religious needs of the general public. Otherwise, people may conclude that Buddhism cannot contribute very much in their day-to-day lives and for their well-being. Characteristics of a monk. Among the salient characteristics of a monk are purity, voluntary poverty, humility, simplicity, selfless service, self-control, patience, compassion and harmlessness. He is expected to observe the four kinds of higher morality, namely Patimokkha Sila, the fundamental moral code, major offenses related to immoral, cruel, harmful, and selfish activities. Indriyasambhara Sila, morality pertaining to sense restraint. Ajivapari Sila, morality pertaining to purity of livelihood. Pakayasanissiddha Sila, morality pertaining to the use of requisites pertaining to life. These four kinds of morality are collectively called Sila Visuddhi, purity of virtue. When a person enters the order and receives his ordination, he is called a Samanera novice monk. He is bound to observe 10 Samanera precepts with certain disciplinary codes for leading a monastic life until he receives his higher ordination Upasampada and becomes a bhikkhu or full-fledged monk. A novice nun is called a Samaneri, and a full-fledged one is called a bhikkhuni. A bhikkhu or monk is bound to observe the above-mentioned four kinds of higher morality, which comprise 227 precepts apart from several other minor ones. The four major ones, which deal with celibacy and abstinence from stealing, murder, and false claims to higher spirituality, must strictly be observed. If he violates any one of these, a monk is regarded as a defeated person in the Sangha community. He will be deprived of certain religious rights by the Sangha community. In the case of other rules which he violates, he has to face many other consequences and make amends according to the gravity of the offense. There are no vows or laws for a bhikkhu. He becomes a bhikkhu of his own accord in order to lead a holy life for as long as he likes. There is therefore no need for him to feel trapped by a vow he made earlier and to be hypocritical because he alone can decide whether or not he wishes to obey the rules. He is at liberty to leave the order at any time and can lead a lay Buddhist way of life when he feels it is inconvenient. He can also return to the monastic life at any time he desires. The same general rules apply for bhikkhunis as well. 10 meritorious and 10 evil actions. A fortunate or unfortunate life depends on individual merits and demerits. The performance of good actions gives rise to merit, punna, a quality which cleanses the mind. If the mind is unchecked, it has the tendency to be ruled by evil tendencies, leading one to perform bad deeds and get into trouble. Merit purifies the mind of the evil tendencies of greed, hatred, and delusion. The greedy mind encourages a person to desire, accumulate, and hoard. The hating mind drags him or her to dislike and anger, and the deluded mind makes one become entangled in greed and hatred, thinking that these evil roots are right and worthy. Demeritorious deeds give rise to more suffering and reduce the opportunities for a person to know and practice the Dharma. Merit is important to help us along our journey through life. It is connected with what are good and beneficial to oneself and others, and can improve the quality of the mind. While the material wealth a person gathers can be lost by theft, flood, fire, confiscation, etc., the benefit of merits follow from life to life and cannot be lost, although it can be exhausted if no attempts are made to perform more merits. A person will experience happiness here and now as well as hereafter through the performance of merit. Merit is a great facilitator. It opens the doors of opportunity everywhere. A meritorious person will succeed in whatever venture he or she puts effort into. If one wishes to do business, one will meet with the right contacts and friends. If one wishes to be a scholar, one will be awarded with scholarships and supported by academic mentors. If one wishes to progress in meditation, one will meet with a skillful meditation teacher who guides one through one's spiritual development. Dreams will be realized through the grace of the treasury of merit. It is merit which enables a person to be reborn in the heavens, and provides him or her with the right conditions and support for the attainment of nirvana. There are several rich fields of merit, recipients of the deed, which give rise to bountiful results to the performer of the good deed. Just as some soil can yield a better harvest, say black fertile soil compared to stony soil, a good deed performed to benefit some persons can give rise to more merits than if it is given to others. The rich fields of merits include the Sangha or holy people, mother, father, and the needy. Good deeds performed to these persons will manifest in many ways and be the fountainhead of many wondrous results. The Buddha taught 10 meritorious deeds for us to perform in order to gain a happy and peaceful life as well as to develop knowledge and understanding. The 10 meritorious deeds are: 1. Generosity, dana. 2. Morality, sila. 3. Mental culture, bhavana. 4. Reverence or respect, apachayana. 5. Service in helping others, vaiyavaka. 6. Transference of merits to others, patidana. 7. Rejoicing in the merits of others, patanumodana. 8. Preaching and teaching the Dharma, dharmadesana. 9. Listening to the Dharma, dharma savana. 10. Straightening one's views, dithajeju. The performance of these 10 meritorious deeds will not only benefit oneself, but others as well, besides giving benefits to the recipients. Moral conduct benefits all beings with whom one comes into contact. Mental culture brings peace to others and inspires them to practice the Dharma. Reverence gives rise to harmony in society, while service improves the lives of others. Sharing merits with others shows that one is concerned about others' welfare, while rejoicing in others' merits encourages others to perform more merits. Teaching and listening to the Dharma are important factors for happiness for both the teacher and listener, while encouraging both to live in line with Dharma. Straightening one's views enables a person to show to others the beauty of Dharma. In the Dharmapada, the Buddha taught: should a person perform good, he should do it again and again. He should find pleasure therein. For blissful is the accumulation of good. 118. Think not lightly of good, saying, it will not come near to me. Even by the falling of drops a water jar is filled. Likewise the wise man, gathering little by little, fills himself with good. 122. 10 evil deeds. There are 10 demeritorious deeds from which people are advised to keep away. These deeds are rooted in greed, hatred, and delusion, and will bring suffering to others but especially to oneself in this life and later lives. When a person understands the law of karma and realizes that bad deeds bring bad results, he or she will then practice right understanding and avoid performing these actions. There are 3 bodily actions which are karmically unwholesome. They are: 1. Killing of living beings, 2. Stealing, and 3. Illicit sexual behavior. These bodily deeds correspond to the first 3 of the 5 precepts for people to follow. The effects of killing to the performer of the deed are short lifespan, ill health, constant grief due to the separation from the loved ones, and living in constant fear. The bad consequences of stealing are poverty, misery, disappointment, and a dependent livelihood. The bad consequences of sexual misconduct are having many enemies, always being hated, and union with undesirable wives and husbands. The 4 verbal actions which are karmically unwholesome are: 1. Lying, 2. Slander and tale-bearing, 3. Harsh speech, and 4. Frivolous and meaningless talk. Except for lying, the other unwholesome deeds performed by speech may be viewed as extensions of the 4th precept. The bad consequences of lying to the one who performs the deed are being subject to abusive speech and vilification, untrustworthiness, and physical unpleasantness. The bad effect of slandering is losing one's friends without any sufficient cause. The results of harsh speech are being detested by others and having a harsh voice. The inevitable effects of frivolous talk are defective bodily organs and speech to which no one pays attention. The three other demeritorious deeds are performed by the mind, and they are as follows: 1. Covetousness, or eager desires especially of things belonging to others, 2. Ill will, and 3. Wrong views. These three deeds correspond to the three evil roots of greed, hatred, and delusion. The non-observance of the fifth precept of abstention from intoxicants can not only lead to the performance of these three demeritorious mental actions after the mind is intoxicated, but also the other demeritorious deeds performed by body and speech. The undesirable result of covetousness is the non-fulfillment of one's wishes. The consequences of ill will are ugliness, manifold diseases, and having a detestable nature. Finally, the consequences of false view are having gross desires, lack of wisdom, being of dull wit, having chronic diseases and blameworthy ideas. A person should always perform good actions and restrain him or herself from doing evil actions. If, however, a person has performed an evil action, it is necessary to realize where wrong has been done and make an effort not to repeat the mistake. This is the true meaning of repentance, and in this way only will a person progress along the noble path to emancipation. Praying for forgiveness is meaningless if, after the prayer is made, a person repeats the evil action again and again. Who is there to wash away a person's sins except oneself? This has to begin with realization, the wonderful cleansing agent. First, one realizes the nature of the deed and the extent of the harm incurred. Next, one realizes that this deed is unwholesome, learns from it, and makes the resolution not to repeat it. Then, one performs many good deeds to benefit the affected party as well as others, as much as possible. In this way, the effect of a bad deed is overcome with a shower of good deeds. No wrongdoer, according to Buddhism, is beyond redemption or rehabilitation, especially with realization and right effort. To be seduced into believing that a person can wash away his or her bad deeds through some other miraculous way is not only a mere superstition, but worse, it is also not useful particularly to the spiritual development of the person. It will only cause one to continue to remain ignorant and morally complacent. This misplaced belief can, in fact, do a person much more harm than the effects of the wrong deed which is feared so much.